Hello everyone and welcome to Unit 2, which is about agricultural business management. Well, after covering the key concepts of agricultural business management in lessons 2 and 3, in this lesson we will dive into more detailed explanations. We will start with breaking down the core economic principles that shape agricultural businesses. These principles influence planning, pricing, investment, and profitability. They explain why some farms remain resilient over time, while others struggle even when production levels are high. Throughout this section, the emphasis is firmly on practical application. The goal is to help you to understand why markets behave the way they do and how that understanding can guide better decisions. Well, economic decision making sits at the core of every agricultural business, whether or not it is formally recognized as such. Every time a farmer chooses what crop to plant, how much land to allocate, when to sell, or whether to invest in a new machinery, they are making an economic decision. These decisions always involve trade-offs between cost and return, between risk and stability, and between short-term needs and long-term goals. These sections helps to make those trade-offs visible and manageable. Well, now let's focus on supply and demand in agriculture. One of the most important economic concepts in agriculture is supply and demand. Supply and demand explain how prices are formed in markets and why those prices change over time. They also explain one of the most frustrating experiences in farming, why a year of excellent production doesn't always translate into higher income. Whether producing or purchasing, all participants in agricultural markets are influenced by what is available, so this is supply, and what is desired, so this is what we call as demand. Farmers respond to prices by adjusting how much they produce. On the other hand, consumers respond to prices by adjusting how much they buy. So price is the outcome of this interaction, and it serves as a signal that guides decisions on both sides of the market. Well, this figure shows the supply curve, which represents the producer's perspective. As prices rise, producers are generally more willing to supply larger quantities. So higher prices can justify additional labor, inputs, and investment. However, this response only makes sense when prices are high enough to cover production costs. If prices fall below cost, producing more actually increases losses. Well, supply refers to the quantity of a good that producers are willing to offer for sale at different prices. It's important to understand that supply is not simply about physical capacity. A farmer may be capable of producing more, but choose not to if market conditions make production unprofitable. In this way, supply reflects economic judgment, so it's not just a technical ability. Well, consider a simple example involving tomato production. If it costs 50 cents per kilogram to grow and harvest tomatoes, selling them for less than that amount creates a loss on every kilogram being sold. In this situation, increasing production doesn't solve the problem. Even it makes it worse. This is a crucial lesson in agricultural economics. High output doesn't automatically mean high profit. Well, now let's look at demand. Demand represents the quantity that consumers are willing to buy at various prices. In general, as prices rise, consumers buy less. But this response is not the same for all agricultural products. This difference in consumer response is explained by price elasticity of demand. Price elasticity measures how sensitive consumers are changed to prices. Some products experience large drops in demand when prices rise, while others experience only small changes. Products with many substitutes tend to have elastic demand. For example, if the price of wheat-based products rises sharply, consumers may switch to alternatives such as rice or barley. This substitution reduces demand for wheat and directly affects farmers' incomes. In contrast, products with few acceptable substitutes tend to have inelastic demand. Olive oil in Mediterranean diets is a good example for this. So even when prices increase in that case, consumers often continue buying similar quantities. For producers, inelastic demand can provide greater price stability, though it doesn't eliminate risk. So it's important to keep in mind that it doesn't eliminate fully the risk, potential risk. Well, understanding elasticity allows producers to better anticipate how the market will respond to price changes. It supports smarter pricing decisions and helps farmers to choose crops based on how sensitive consumers are likely to be to changes in prices. Well, in agriculture, both supply and demand are influenced by many external factors. Supply is affected by weather conditions, input costs, government subsidies, and technological change. Demand is influenced by income levels, consumer preferences, seasonal patterns, health trends, and trade policies. This complexity makes agricultural markets especially challenging to predict. Let's now look more closely at the factors that influence supply in agriculture. Well, unlike many other industries, agricultural supply is strongly affected by forces outside the human control. Weather conditions such as droughts, floods, frost, or heat waves can indeed significantly reduce output, regardless of how well a farm is managed. At the same time, rising input costs, including fertilizer, feed, fuel, energy, and labor, can limit how much producers are willing or able to supply. Even when demand is strong, high costs or poor conditions can restrict supply conditions. This figure illustrates the typical inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded. As prices increase, demand generally decreases, but the steepness of this decline depends on how elastic the product is. Visual tools like this help to translate abstract economic ideas into practical understanding for real-world decision-making conditions. Well, in terms of demand in agriculture is shaped primarily by consumers and their circumstances. Changes in income levels affect what people can afford to buy. Cultural habits influence what foods are preferred. Seasonal patterns determine when certain products are consumed. More recently, health concerns, sustainability awareness, and ethical considerations have become powerful drivers of demand. This figure illustrates a basic demand curve showing how quantity demanded typically decreases as price increases. However, the key insight here is not simply that demand falls when prices rise. Instead, it's more about how much demand falls. That difference determines whether a market is relatively stable or highly volatile, and it has major implications for producers. Well, to see how supply and demand interact in the real world, let's consider a concrete example, the apple glut example. Well, imagine a year in which weather conditions across Europe are ideal for apple production. Yields are high, quality is good, and almost every apple producer enjoys an excellent harvest. With so many apples entering the market at the same time, total supply increases dramatically. However, consumer demand for apples doesn't suddenly double. As a result, prices fall sharply as farmers compete to sell their products. Despite strong production, many producers face financial losses. This is one of the most difficult realities in agriculture. Abundance can reduce income. Producers who manage to cope with these situations are usually those who adapt quickly. Some invest in storage facilities to delay selling until prices recover. Others process apples into juice, cider, or dried products, so reducing dependence on fresh market prices. These value-added strategies help to stabilize income and reduce exposure to price volatility. Well, this brings us to the concept of market equilibrium. Market equilibrium occurs at the price where the quantity supplied equals to the quantity demanded. At this point, the market clears, producers sell what they offer, and consumers buy what they want with no surplus or shortages. From the consumer's perspective, equilibrium represents a price they consider reasonable. From the producer's perspective, it represents a price that covers costs and provides a return. Market equilibrium balances these competing interests, at least for some temporary period. Well, when prices rise above the equilibrium level, consumers begin to reduce their purchases. Unsold products accumulate, creating surpluses. In agriculture, surplus often leads to storage problems, waste, or forced price reductions, especially for perishable goods. When prices fall below equilibrium, the opposite problem emerges. Consumers want to buy more, but producers may not be willing or able to supply enough at these prices. This, at the end, creates shortages and places upward pressures on prices over time. This figure shows the equilibrium point graphically, where the supply and demand curves intersect. It helps to visualize how markets naturally move towards balance, even though they rarely stay there for long. In agriculture, prices tend to fluctuate around equilibrium rather than remaining fixed. Seasonal production cycles, weather shocks, and delayed responses to price signals all contribute to this ongoing movement. For farmers, this means managing volatility rather than expecting stability. Early economists such as Adam Smith believed that markets naturally move towards equilibrium through these self-correcting forces. According to this view, individual decisions by producers and consumers guide markets towards balance without central coordination. Consider the opposite of the apple glut, a tomato shortage. Poor weather, reduced supply, prices rise, and consumers feel the impact. These higher prices may encourage other farmers to plant tomatoes in the following season, increasing future supply in that sense. Modern economists recognize that real agricultural markets are far from perfect. Market power, government intervention, trade restrictions, and unequal access to information often prevent prices from reflecting true supply and demand. Understanding these limitations is essential for realistic agricultural planning. So, when markets are distorted, prices can become disconnected from real supply and demand conditions. In these situations, prices may rise not because products are scarce, but because access to them is restricted. A good agricultural example is when large grain or rice producing countries impose export restrictions. Even if there is enough supply locally, limiting exports can reduce availability on global markets, pushing prices higher for producers and consumers elsewhere. These price increases reflect policy decisions rather than true market balance. Well, in terms of challenges to market equilibrium, agricultural markets face several challenges that make equilibrium difficult to maintain. Production delays mean farmers must commit resources long before they know market outcomes. Weather volatility adds further uncertainty. In addition to natural factors, subsidies and price supports can distort production decisions. These policies may encourage continued production even when demand is weak, contributing to long-term oversupply. Well, this brings us to one of the most critical concepts in agricultural business management, which is known as cost of production. Cost of production refers to the total expenses incurred in growing crops or raising livestock. Understanding costs is essential for determining profitability and sustainability. Production costs include both direct and indirect costs. Direct costs include seeds, fertilizers, fuel, feed, and hired labor. Indirect costs include machinery depreciation, water usage, insurance, land rent, and overhead. Accurately calculating production cost allows farmers to set realistic prices, evaluate enterprise performance, and make informed investment decisions. Without this knowledge, even high-yield operations can struggle in financial terms. Well, let's apply the concept of production cost to a concrete farming example. Imagine a tomato producer cultivating 1 hectare of land. Seeds, labor, irrigation, and fuel amount to €3,500. In addition, indirect costs such as machinery maintenance and land rental add another €1,000. This brings the total cost of production to €4,500 per hectare, a critical number for pricing and profitability decisions. Well, understanding production costs is essential for several reasons. It allows farmers to price products competitively, evaluate profitability, and determine whether an enterprise is sustainable in the long term. Cost awareness also supports access to subsidies or financial support, which often require detailed documentation. When farmers clearly understand their costs, they are better positioned to make informed planting and investment decisions. They can respond more quickly to market signals, adjust production strategies, and identify opportunities to improve efficiency. 2 simple formulas help turn cost data into practical management tools. Total cost equals fixed cost plus variable costs. The break-even price is calculated by dividing total cost by total output. For example, a wheat producer who incurs total cost of €1,500 and produces 1,000 kilograms has a break-even price of €1.50 per kilogram. Selling at €1.70 generates profit, while selling at €1.30 results in losses unless supported by subsidies or diversification. Okay, at this stage, several key lessons emerge. Understanding supply, demand, equilibrium, and production costs allow farmers to make informed decisions, manage risk, and improve long-term profitability. These principles transform farming from a reactive activity into a managed business. Well, we now shift our focus to the role of technology in modern agricultural enterprises. Today's farms increasingly operate as data-driven businesses rather than traditional production systems. Technology influences not only how food is produced, but also how it is monitored, marketed, and delivered. Technological innovation is reshaping agriculture at an unpredicted pace. From satellite-guided machinery to AI-powered analytics, technology enables farmers to improve efficiency, sustainability, and profitability. Staying competitive increasingly depends on understanding and adopting these tools in a strategic manner. Well, despite its benefit, technology adoption is not always easy. In many regions, the majority of active farmers are over the age of 55. While experience is invaluable, limited training, infrastructure gaps, or hesitation towards unfamiliar systems can slow adaptation process. Closing the generational gap in agriculture is essential if technological innovation is to be truly effective. New tools only create value when they are accessible, practical, and useful for farmers at all stages of their careers. In this section, we introduce the main characteristics of agricultural technology, look at how they are applied in real farming contexts, and discuss how producers can critically evaluate both the benefits and limitations of these innovations within their own operations. Well, let's start with precision agriculture. Precision agriculture represents a major shift in how farms are managed. Instead of treating entire fields uniformly, precision agriculture focuses on managing variability in soil, crops, and weather conditions. Technologies used in precision agriculture include GPS-guided tractors, drones, soil sensors, weather stations, and satellite imagery. These tools allow farmers to apply inputs such as fertilizer, water, and pesticides exactly where and when they are needed. Well, the benefits of precision agriculture are significant. It reduces input waste, increases yields per hectare, and improves environmental outcomes such as reduced nutrient runoff. Precision agriculture allows farmers to produce more while using fewer resources. For example, a vineyard in northern Greece uses soil moisture sensors and satellite imagery to adjust irrigation levels in vineyard. This approach improves grape quality by reducing water use by 35%, demonstrating both economic and environmental benefits. Well, labor shortages are one of the most pressing challenges in agriculture today. Automation offers solutions by allowing farms to maintain productivity with fewer workers. In practice, automation appears in many forms across modern agriculture. In crop production, automated irrigation and fertigation systems adjust water and nutrient delivery based on real-time conditions. In livestock systems, milking robots and automated feeding stations help to improve consistency, animal welfare, and labor efficiency. In protected agriculture, climate-controlled greenhouses automatically manage temperature, humidity, and ventilation. And in field crops and horticulture, autonomous harvesters are increasingly used for fruits, vegetables, and grains, reducing dependence on manual labor. Well, automation is especially valuable in regions with aging rural populations or strict labor regulations. However, it requires careful evaluation of upfront investment costs, maintenance needs, and long-term returns. Like all technology, automation must be adopted strategically. Well, today's forms generate huge amounts of information. Data comes in from many directions, like from satellite images planting plans, machinery records, and even livestock weight tracking. Collecting data is no longer the difficult part. The real challenge is making sense of it and turning it into decisions that actually improve how the farm operates. So, data-driven farming relies on a range of digital tools that help farmers turn information into action. Farm management systems bring together data from across the operation, so from inputs and field activities to yields and costs. So decisions are based on the whole picture, not isolated observations. Weather prediction models help farmers to plan around risk, improving timing for planting, spraying, and harvesting. AI-based tools support early detection of diseases or stress in crops, allowing problems to be addressed before they spread. And mobile applications make this information useful in the field, supporting tasks like crop planning, scouting, and pest monitoring in real time. Well, let's look at a brief real-world example. In central Italy, a cooperative grain producer uses a cloud-based data platform to bring different types of information together. So, information about yield records, weather forecasts, and market prices. Instead of treating these as separate data sources, they analyze them as one system. By adjusting planting dates to match expected market peaks and reduce weather-related risk, the cooperative has been able to make more strategic decisions. Over 3 growing seasons, this data-driven approach has increased profit margins by about 12%. Well, technology also plays an important role beyond production, especially in marketing, certification, and logistics. Today's consumers are no longer satisfied with just buying the food. They increasingly want to know where it comes from, how it was produced, and whether it meets certain quality or sustainability standards. This demand for transparency has driven the growth of digital marketplaces and traceability tools. Through these tools, producers can show product origin, production methods, and certifications, often directly to the consumers. At the same time, digital platforms make it easier to sell products directly, manage supply chains, and verify standards such as organic or protected designation goods. In this way, technology helps to build trust, improve market access, and add value beyond the farm gate. Well, a good example of this comes from a small-scale olive oil producer in Crete. By using QR codes on every bottle, the producer gives consumers direct access to information about where the olives come from, how the oil is produced, and what sustainability standards are met. This level of transparency builds trust and clearly differentiates the product from mass market alternatives. As a result, the producer has been able to access premium export markets in Northern Europe and sell at higher value rather than competing one price alone. Well, up to this point, we have built a strong foundation in agricultural business management. We have examined economic principles, cost structures, and the role of technology in modern agriculture. This final section moves beyond the basics and introduces more advanced topics that help to prepare agricultural managers for complex real-world challenges. Well, as your management skills develop, the questions you face naturally becomes more complex. You begin looking beyond day-to-day operations and start thinking about strategy, long-term positioning, and new opportunities. That shift is exactly the focus of the next chapter, where we're going to explore more advanced topics, connections across disciplines, and the emerging trends in shaping the future of agriculture. You can think of this chapter as a bridge. It connects the practical knowledge you have already gained with the rapidly changing realities of modern agriculture. In this section, we move into more advanced strategic tools, take a deeper look at marketing decisions, and explore how agriculture increasingly intersects with sustainability and data-driven technologies. We will also spend some time looking ahead. This means exploring the forces that are already reshaping agriculture. So, from smart robotics and artificial intelligence to the growing impact of climate change. Understanding these trends helps agricultural professionals to get prepared for the future, so rather than simply reacting it. As you gain confidence in managing agricultural enterprises, the decisions you face naturally becomes more complex. This section introduces strategic tools such as SWOT analysis, strategic planning, and advanced marketing techniques. These tools help to structure decision making, allowing managers to balance risk and opportunity rather than relying on intuition alone. Well, agriculture doesn't operate in isolation. It is deeply connected to environmental science, sustainability, and rapidly evolving technologies. Understanding this connection allows agricultural enterprises to become more resilient, efficient, environmentally responsible, and sustainable over time. You will learn how to assess the environmental impact of agricultural activities and use data analytics and predictive models to support better decisions. Through practical exercises, these tools are shown not as abstract concepts, but as approaches that can transform how agricultural decisions are made in real-world settings. In modern agriculture, sustainability is not just an ethical goal, instead it's a strategic necessity. Well, looking ahead, agriculture is being reshaped by powerful emerging trends. Innovations such as robotics, artificial intelligence, blockchain-based traceability systems, and climate-smart agricultural practices are already transforming how food is produced and managed. Staying informed about these trends allows agricultural professionals to act proactively rather than react under pressure. We conclude this unit with a central idea: strategic thinking. Today, agricultural decisions go far beyond choosing crops or scheduling harvests. Farmers and agri-entrepreneurs operate in an environment shaped by volatile markets, rapid technological change, unpredictable climate conditions, and evolving consumer expectations. In this context, simply surviving from one season to the next is no longer enough. It is strategic thinking and informed decision making that allow agricultural enterprises not just to endure change, but to grow and succeed because of it. At its core, strategic decision making is about making choices with the future in mind. It means basing decisions on a realistic understanding of the farm's internal strengths and limitations, while also taking into account external conditions such as markets, policies, and environmental risks. Rather than reacting to short-term pressures or unexpected events, strategic decision-making involves carefully weighing risks, identifying opportunities, and keeping long-term goals in focus. When done well, these decisions connect everyday farm operations to broader business objectives, helping position the enterprise for sustained success over time. Well, this is where strategic thinking becomes essential. Strategic thinking is both a mindset and a skill set. It allows agricultural businesses to step back, assess their situation clearly, anticipate challenges before they arise, and consider more than one possible path forward. Instead of focusing only on immediate problems, strategic thinking opens up space to plan for different future scenarios and make more deliberate, informed choices. Rather than concentrating only on immediate concerns, strategic thinking encourages a proactive approach. It helps farm enterprises to plan ahead, see uncertainty as something that can be managed, and bring clarity to complex situations. When applied effectively, strategic thinking allows farms not just to cope with disruptions, but to turn those disruptions into sources of competitive advantage. In practice, strategic thinking translates into a series of concrete actions. It involves setting clear long-term objectives, honestly evaluating internal strengths and weaknesses, and paying close attention to external factors such as markets, policies, and environmental conditions. From there, strategies are developed that are not only actionable but flexible enough to adapt as conditions change. Strategic thinking is also an ongoing reflection process, regularly asking where the business stands today, where it aims to go in the future, and what steps are needed to bridge that gap. So, why does strategy really matter? Because without a clear strategy, farm businesses are often pushed from one decision to the next by circumstances they don't control, so market swings, policy changes, or short term trends. A well defined business strategy allows farm managers to take control of their future. It provides a clear direction for navigating uncertainty, improving how efficiently the operation runs, and deciding which new opportunities are worth pursuing and which are not. Just as importantly, strategy creates discipline. It helps managers to stay focused on long-term goals instead of being distracted by temporary market noise or pressure to react to every new trend. In this way, strategy turns uncertainty from a threat into something that can be managed deliberately. Well, one final point is especially important. Building an effective strategy doesn't mean avoiding difficult conversations. In fact, it requires confronting them directly. Addressing risk, resource limitations, and market constraints heads on leads to planning that is more realistic, more grounded, and ultimately more effective. When strategic thinking is applied consistently, it becomes more than a set of tools or a one-time exercise. It evolves into a guiding mindset that shapes how decisions are made, supports innovation, and builds long-term resilience within an agricultural enterprise. Well, this was the end of this chapter. Thank you for your attention. And remember, in agriculture, continuous learning is one of the most valuable investments you can make.